Collaborative intelligence is what happens when humans work in conjunction with AI to achieve outstanding results. In many scenarios, humans and computers working side by side can blow away the achievements of people or machines alone. GitHub Copilot is an almost perfect example of collaborative intelligence. It utilizes advanced language models to help you get productive and solve more problems in less time as a developer. I'm Ronnie Scher. I lead a team of developers at a startup, and my team and I have been blown away by Copilot. In this course, we'll start by playing around with Copilot. Then we'll cut through the boredom of writing boilerplate code by letting Copilot write most of it for us. We'll then write some working application code alongside of Copilot and use Copilot to effortlessly write tests for this code, until finally, you'll get a sense of what it's like to use this game-changing tool. So, let's get to it. So, what is Copilot, and why did Mike Krieger, who co-founded Instagram, call it the single most mind-blowing application of ML? Copilot is an AI pair programmer. It helps you write code, and on the surface, it may look a bit like many of the code completion tools out there. To understand the difference between Copilot and a standard code completion tool, we'll have to look under the hood. Copilot is powered by GPT-3. Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3 is one of the most, if not the most, advanced language models out there. Now, many language models can only be trained with so much data or parameters before you start experiencing diminishing returns. The language model won't get much better when you hit a certain number of parameters. GPT-3 was trained with over 100 billion parameters, meaning it kept getting better the more parameters it got. Now, as a result, it can perform tasks such as summarize texts extremely well. It can also generate convincing articles. How convincing? About half read these articles weren't able to distinguish between the ones that GPT-3 created and the ones that people wrote. Finally, it can do some things that we don't usually associate with language, like draw. Why can it draw? Perhaps because it was trained with SVGs as well. Copilot was fine-tuned using a lot of open-sourced code, which makes it extremely effective at creating novice code. That is, code that has never been written before. Now, unlike many code completion tools, it can generate a lot of working code based on context, based on comments, function names, the files, the software it's in, which makes it extremely effective in helping you get the most out of your time and energy as a developer. As Spider-Man's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility. Now, Copilot enhances your programming skills, and it's important that you use those skills for good. Further, Copilot will often generate a lot of working code. And it's important that you spend some time and reinvest some of that time saved in really going through that code, in understanding that code, in assuring the quality of it. See, you cannot just commit code that you perceive as working without understanding what it is you're putting into software. For instance, my team, for example, uses Copilot. All the members of my team are now using it, and often we'll notice that Copilot helps us with text translation. We still send it to translation review to make sure that these translations mean what we intend them to mean. Also, just because something does what you want it to do doesn't mean it doesn't do additional things. So you want to make sure that it does what you want and just what you want. So with that said, let's go ahead and check out Copilot in action. We're just about ready to take Copilot for a test flight, so let's get it set up. The first thing we'll do is install the extension, then we'll sign in to our GitHub account from VS Code. Then we'll get creative with it. And at the time of this recording, Copilot is available for technical previewers. If you want to go ahead and sign up for the technical preview and there's a spot, you'll be able to use it then. Hopefully by the time you watch this, it's widely available for anyone who wants to use Copilot. Now, if I head over to the extension section at VS Code and type in GitHub Copilot, the first thing that will come up is GitHub Copilot by GitHub. I already have it installed, so there's no need to install it again. Now, the next thing you'll want to do is make sure you're signed into your GitHub account in VS Code. Now, once this is all set up, all you have to do is start a new file. And it's a good idea to choose a language for Copilot to know what to suggest. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Python. And now let's mess around. So the first thing I'm going to do is start perhaps a list and call it like 5 names. And it's calling each name 5. So let's give it an idea like John. And there you'll see 5 names. Here it shows the 5 names of the Beatles, which is kind of funny. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab. And it's actually the 4 Beatles. I should correct myself, and Yoko for Yoko Ono. So a little sense of humor on the side of Copilot, which is definitely a recurring theme. Now let's go to the next line and do another list and call it like ages. And interestingly, it picked to give me 5 ages. So maybe it knows to map age to name. Now, next thing I'll do is let's do like map name age, and it's doing it with a dictionary and it's zipping, which is an interesting way of doing this actually. I haven't tried this in Python, interesting enough. And let's do another one. Let's do a function and do like def average age. And whenever I feel like Copilot needs a little more direction, I add more comments, I get more explicit with the names of the functions or the signature. And here I see that the signature has name. So if I did like age list, I'm actually quite sure that should be enough. Great. It's doing the sum of the age list divided by the len of the age list, which is great. So I've hit save and I notice there's no name for this file. So I'll call it testflight.py. So now I can sort of continuously save. Next, you can do some things that are out there. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You can even ask it to use external resources. So for example, if I do like import request, so let's do another one and call it translate word. So def translate word and give it like a language and a API key. And let's say like use a translation API. Great. So it's using the Yandex API, which might be a translation API. Many times this is correct. Many times you sort of need to check this for yourself. Now, suppose you're happy with this, you can tab through to accept it. You can also hit next and get more suggestions. You can also use this to open the side panel and synthesize a bunch of suggestions. Okay, so here we have a few suggestions. I'm going to go ahead and try another one and do like a classic one, which is the Fibonacci. And yep, Fibonacci number calculation. I want to say that it can do a little bit better than that. So let's like do something else. Let's give it some direction. So I'll give it a little comment and create an efficient Fibonacci function using LRU cache. So that might run quite faster if I'm not mistaken. So there we have it. Actually, if a lot of times you have something you want to import, so you can also do like a from, that's right, functools import LRU cache. So here we have just a few things you can do to sort of get started with it. And in the next videos, we'll put this to use in the context of starting to write an application. So hopefully you got a sense of what it's like to mess around with Copilot, and now we're ready to get started.